Morning all and welcome to the Jump Advisory recruitment discussion on attracting talent. If you can hear me, please put a hearty hello in the chat box. Last week we discussed candidate attraction and the issues we have. And this we're going to focus this week we're going to focus on our own industry and attracting a talent for our own industry. As always, I like to do a little bit of digging before we go into these webinars. So I've done an awful lot of research with LinkedIn. And what they're saying now, there are more job postings on their platform for recruiters than there was pre-COVID. In fact, the number of job postings for recruiters has rose by a factor of 7. So I'm not sure what they're going from, but from a factor of 7, that's quite a big view. They're stating that recruiters hire via advertisements has increased by 33% between Jan 2019 and March 2020, but by 59% from April 2020 to June 2021. So LinkedIn is starting to say there's an awful lot of activity now within our marketplace, and it's hugely growing. They noticed that the skills that we require for recruitment in the adverts have been, the first one is account management, sales, customer service, and administration, but they want people who can build relationships and can influence decision makers. And Dave, one for you, they said they want people who can tell a good story.
Ah, lovely.
Brilliant. So what they're saying is recruiters has changed. And since the pandemic, lots of things have changed. Recruiters have changed what they're looking for. 21% now want security, but 19% of recruiters said they are looking at the purposeful mission statement of the company that they are going to work for. More HR people, Heather, are moving into recruitment, and they've seen a 24% increase in that, but they've actually seen a huge decrease in the number of salespeople actually hired. So it's interesting how recruiters are now moving away. What they're saying that the recruitment agency wants is that sure bet person who can ramp up really, really quickly, and they understand that they're going to have to look for the right behaviors and the right skills, and they understand that they may have to train people how to recruit if they can get proper transferable skills that match their recruitment profile. So it's a really interesting sort of view when you look at what LinkedIn's bringing back from what we're putting out into the marketplace. So the question is, how much do we learn from that, and what can we do with that? So today, as usual, we've got Paul Jacobs, we've got Heather Saw, we've got Dave Pye. Paul Sharp's actually on client site. So if you want to ask questions, feel free to ask any questions. It's quite interesting. Sometimes we get asked questions when we're out on private meetings and meeting with clients saying, I'm a bit stupid asking this question. Well, I can guarantee if you think it's stupid, probably 25 to 40% of the people on this webinar also are thinking exactly the same. So it doesn't matter how stupid you think the question is, get it asked. So Heather, last week you said you didn't want the first question.
Right,
you didn't
that was such a mistake.
Yeah. I'm not going to out you anymore again. I'm not going to mention that ever again, but Heather, you didn't want the first question. So this week, I'm going to come to you as our resident HR guru. Let's not talk theory. Let's not talk the perfect world. Let's talk what EVP actually means to a business when we're talking about attracting talent to come and work for the business.
Thanks, Howard. I think it's really interesting, the whole concept of EVP. And you say we don't want theory, we want practical. EVP makes it sound like it's something, rocket science-y. It's not rocket science. EVP stands for Employee Value Proposition, and it's really about your organization's window on the world. So it's setting your stall out and often in a comprehensive, beautifully marketed document, but that's not what's important. It's the content. It's why would you come and work for us? So EVP isn't rocket science. It's just taking the trouble to say, what is it about my organization that is special and that is attractive to bringing people in? And I think it's really interesting, Howard, you said that there are less salespeople joining and more HR people. And I do think that's to do with the way the world of recruitment and the role of a recruiter is changing. And we've talked about that a lot. So I think even if you've got an EVP, it's well worth revisiting it and saying, based on the kind of people I'm attracting now, which will be different than a couple of years ago, what should I be saying about my organization? How would I want to position myself across a whole range of things, from the way in which we create work, the way in which we reward people, the social purpose of our organization, the way we develop people, all of those things, they're all aspects of recruitment that we need to be telling people about. And the really big thing, I think, is I had a group of 20 trainees yesterday, management trainees, and I asked all of them, why did you, what was it about recruit? Why did you become a recruiter? And every single one of the people on that call said, well, I fell into it. And I think that we have to acknowledge that as an industry and do more to reach out and tell people what a great industry this is. And our EVP is a big part of that.
It's interesting, is it? Before we came on the webinar, we were talking about a company that 3 or 4 years ago threw an advertisement. We said, yeah, there's no such thing as bad advertising, that threw an advert out on what they did for one of their winners trips, and all their clients thought it was a borrow and actually cancelled what they were doing. But that was part of their EVP, because this is saying this is what this company actually looks like. So I think we've got to start to think about that EVP works both ways, is that how we connect ourselves to our client base is really important, but then what is perception, what is actually reality becomes more important. So if we're given this shiny, glittering EVP and I walk through the door and it's completely the opposite, then it has a very, very counterbalancing sort of a conversation to be had during the interview. Dave,
it's interesting, just that thought, that I hadn't thought of it that way. Actually, our sector, the recruitment sector, needs to look at its EVP. Let alone all the different organisations that make up our sector. I think we could all work on our own EVP as a sector to get people to join. It's interesting for me. So for the last 4 weeks, my son, who's 20, has been interviewing with 7 different recruitment companies, and he's now found a job, and he started this week. And so I've had this kind of personal experience as a dad, as a father who loves his son, but also someone who's going into IT recruitment. He was previously working in financial services. He's now got a job in IT recruitment. And I asked him why he chose the company he chose, because he was fortunate enough to get offers from a number. And he said, the owners, they made me feel as if I really mattered to the company, and that I would make a difference to their company. So it wasn't about what they could offer him, and it wasn't necessarily about the benefits and the time and the commission and all of those things. It was that sense of Oscar, is my son, of his purpose as to what he would do for that company, and how what he stands for absolutely mattered. And for me, Heather, when you said it, that's what EVP is about. His answer to me was really what EVP is about. So
Dave, I completely agree, and that linked to social purpose, I think, is becoming increasingly important. And the new generation of people that are coming through want to make a difference, want to understand their purpose, and want to understand the organization's social purpose.
And given that we've got a huge shortage of talent in our sector, we are going to have to look elsewhere. To your point, Howard, about training other people, we're going to have to look elsewhere. So there aren't enough recruiters going around, as we all know. So it's the people who aren't in our sector, who may be coming from other business areas. How we attract them, that's going to be the key success factors, I think, in the next 12 months.
Before I ask the next question, I know PJ will be dying to have a comment on EVP. So let's have your comment, EVP.
Thank you so much, Mr. Greenwood.
We'll jump straight to the next question as well.
Mr. Greenwood, if you like, I can canter through all the questions in one answer if you want. I think let's just talk about EVP. I obviously agree with everything Dave and Heather have said. I think Heather said it very well. It's not just a nice piece of paper that you put down, a document that you put together, although I think that's quite important. It has to be meaningful. And I mean, true EVP is, there are almost like 3 concentric circles, and essentially the way you look at a business from an outside perspective. So if you're looking at a business, let's look at Apple as the obvious example. So as a consumer looking at Apple, what would you imagine it's like to work for that business is really the question you'd want to ask yourself. And then you would then, once you've got the job, find that working for Apple was exactly as you imagined it was going to be based upon your perception of that business looking from the outside in. In other words, it's completely consistent. If the outside looking in suggests that it's, unbelievable high-tech business, it's very modern and blah, 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 then your work experience should reflect that exactly. It shouldn't be any different. Then the third part of this kind of concentric circle situation is that you are experiencing a level of autonomy working in that business, that you are empowered to work in the business in relation to the company's values and the way in which the company operates. So everything needs to be tightly consistent with the other. Where it all falls down is where people talk about their business and how wonderful it is and the perception of the business from the outside. And then when you work inside it, you see there's a difference. That the glossy brochure that you looked at when you were considering joining the business is nothing like the experience of working inside the company. So it's not something to take lightly. You cannot say to people, come and join us. We're a wonderful, brilliant business. Look at our website. Look at our glossy brochure. Isn't it fabulous? And here's the interview process. And we're all lovely, shiny people. Come and work inside the company and you'll see that it's exactly as we've portrayed it. And then when you're working there, discover that it's completely opposite to everything that you imagined it was going to be. We all know the outcome to that. So this is something that has to be looked at very carefully. And the way in which you treat people when they're working for you, as I said, that third element is extremely important. This isn't something to take lightly. It's an all-consuming subject.
Just to support that, the last organisation that I worked on developing an EVP for, we developed it with people from that organisation. So it wasn't done, independently of the existing teams. And we also, it was slightly aspirational, because you're presenting the best side of you. But actually, we used it as an internal document as well to say, okay, hold this up. We are accountable. This is what we say it is like to work here. We are therefore accountable to this, to you, our current teams. And if this isn't how it really is working here, then you need to come and talk to us so that we can do something about it. And it was such a valuable document to have for internal accountability as well as external, because as you say, Paul, your nail on the head, it has to be congruent. What you experience has to be what you've been sold.
To move this forward, because I think it's important to move this forward, what we're saying is it's like that old glossy holiday brochure that you get. You book a 5-star holiday based on the pictures and you arrive and it's a building site. Yeah, that's what we used to experience. Yeah, that's what we used to get. So let's move on to the question, which is the bigger question, which probably most people on this call want to actually understand. If you were running an agency, where would you start now looking for new talent and staff?
Are you going to pounce on one of us, or do you want us to volunteer?
We're hovering, Howard, just waiting to see you.
There was no need to pounce because Jacob's had his finger up before.
I've got good reflexes. What else can I tell you?
To the toilet, obviously.
Look, everybody is. I mean, you're talking here. You asked the question: if you were running an agency, where would you start looking for staff? It's a great question. Every one of us has a situation, a challenge with every one of our clients, because every one of our clients is currently looking for additional staff. They're all scaling up, thankfully, because their clients are scaling up. And as we all know, the market is getting pretty hot. And it shouldn't come as a shock, should it, that we as an industry are struggling to find new people for our industry when we're seeing exactly that situation with every one of our clients, where it's candidate short across every industry sector, and the recruitment industry sector is not exempt. It's very hard to find the quality people we all want in this current marketplace. And of course, everyone's looking for the golden bullet, where everyone is looking for the perfectly formed, trained individual that's got recruitment experience that will segue neatly and easily into our existing businesses, who portray the abilities, the skill sets, and the personality traits that will work perfectly for us and at the right salary. I mean, those are a lot of boxes to tick. And frankly, finding that unicorn, as you might call them, is as you might expect, rather difficult, rather challenging. So the answer to the question, I think, is we grow our own. And Heather started this conversation by saying, actually, when I had a chat yesterday with people, everybody fell into recruitment. Now, I smiled at that, because whenever I do any sort of stand-up talks at conferences, when we were allowed to do those, and hopefully they won't be too far around the corner, I always say to people, if there's 100 people, hands in the air, who made a deliberate decision, conscious decision to get into recruitment. It's hilarious, because you generally see about 3 hands out of 100 go up. And I say to these people, these are recruitment leaders, all of you are looking for experienced recruiters to join your business, and yet somebody somewhere in the past saw you as having potential to do well in recruitment, and look at you now, you're leading recruitment businesses. Why, therefore, are you not adopting the same attitude and looking for people who have potential, who can be developed and become the sort of people you are today? Why are you looking for people that have experience?
So jump in there, Paul. I'm going to be controversial here before Dave and Heather have their view on this. I'm going to be a bit controversial. So you're talking about looking for people on the outside. And what we tend to find is that we can't find people, and the people that we bring in, because the churn rate in recruitment is appalling, I'm going to say we are looking for the wrong people. So the first place that I would start to look for people is I'd start to look at my recruitment profile and say, right, this is a type of person that I want. And I base that from what Heather just said by going away and speaking to my recruiters that are working really well.
Correct.
What is their profile of that person? Therefore, when I go out, rather than looking for the unicorn that you're saying, I'm going out and looking for someone with the right behavioral skills that I can then train, recruit.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Howard. I think we're in the same place. I think what I'm saying is look for people with transferable skills. And I think later on we're going to talk about EQ and IQ, but look for people who've got transferable skills or the potential to develop in our business. And to your point, know what skill sets you're looking for, know what personality traits you're looking for, because these are things that we know are hugely important in our industry sector. And by the way, if you were asking me now, where do you look for staff? I think there's a terrific opportunity to draw people in from a range of sectors who have particularly suffered during the last 15, 16 months, i.e. events, for example, hospitality, for example, and so forth. I think we can find people from those areas.
So Heather and Dave.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you go back to what you said at the very beginning, Howard, that people want relationships, they want people to sell a good story, they want account management, that's what we want. That we know, everybody on this call knows there is no easy answer to where to get good people from. But if you go back to that and you add into that the EVP of the recruitment sector, in other words, what we do really matters. Finding jobs for people in order that they can grow, develop their career, feed their families, have an income, really matters. So if you take that we've got a really solid purpose in recruitment, we just need to let more people know about it. Then to Paul's point, you can go to hospitality, you can go to the call centers, you can go to the sports arena. There's lots of sectors that you can go to get good people, as long as you don't expect them to have recruitment experience.
Correct.
A couple of companies that I'm connected to, they've gone to, for example, schools where they've had to organise events and hire teachers and things like that, just the actual schools, and they've taken people from that sort of education sector into recruitment. So there isn't an easy answer, and I don't want to make it appear that there is. But certainly, if you look at the type of skills that we need in recruitment to grow our businesses, then there are sectors out there where we can attract people, and they tend to be not the highest paying sectors either. I recognise it's not all about money, we know that, but there are sectors out there where I think recruitment as a sector irrespective of which business you're working in, is quite attractive. And I know a number of companies in the last 6 to 8 weeks have had real success in hiring outside of recruitment.
Absolutely. And
if you're going to wait for the best recruiters from your competitors, you're going to be waiting a long, long time. And the biggest cost to a business is an empty desk.
Yeah,
completely right.
I agree with you. Can I just add something to that? Is that sometimes I think organizations miss a trick by not leveraging the connections of their own workforce. So if you've got an engaged workforce who are actually your best advocate for why recruitment is a great industry to join and why your organization is a great joy, are you making use of that opportunity? Are you leveraging their networks, their connections? Are you incentivizing them to encourage people to come and join your organization?
Well, I just to add to that, Heather, a couple of quick points. Number one, we haven't said it, but I'll say it now. Database, our candidate database on the CRM, hopefully, and if you're an established business particularly, you have thousands, tens of thousands of candidates. It's impossible to think that there aren't suitable people already sitting on our database. And to the point of to Heather's point, I had a conversation with several clients recently where I've said, if part of the performance criteria for our consultants was to say to them, and this is just a wild example, you have to find a minimum of one person every year to join our business. Don't we think that's achievable? Because I would absolutely say that was achievable. If we place a focus on it, if we can find candidates for our clients, often at very short notice, why can't we apply the same level of urgency and focus on filling our own desks?
And I understand that, Paul, but I think the level of urgency we put, because we all know that we are great at recruiting for our clients, but we're poor at recruiting for ourselves. And I think it's because we spend an awful lot of time with our clients, understanding our clients' needs, understanding our clients' behaviors, our clients' skill sets, and yet we don't dig into our own behaviors and our own skill sets and apply on that. And I think that's where we start to look. So, we go back to that, look at the recruitments that work really well. And I'll go back to the comment that's about, hire your own. I've been speaking to 4 or 5 big agencies between 20 and 50. And what they've been saying that for the last 5 years, they've been measuring their recruitment, and 80% of people in their top 10 salespeople are all homegrown. I then asked the question regarding the recruiters that you've took on. They said, there's 20% that are recruiters. I said, and how many recruiters have you taken on against homegrown? And they've all said, we've actually taken more recruiters than we have homegrown people. So we've had a massive churn of those people. And I said, why is that churn? And they said, we've always hired on skills, people promising and not being able to deliver. So that the 20% that are remaining in our top 10 are people who are behaviorally aligned to our business. And that was the key. And you could hear the penny drop on 1 or 2 of them going, behaviorally aligned. So we've hired on skills, fired on behaviors. The ones that have survived is because they have their behaviors. They're not their biggest billers ever, but they are good, strong billers. So we need to start to think about creating our own. And we've asked a question by Sam there regarding training that, small recruitment agencies don't have training material. And I deal with this all the time because I deal with lots of small recruitment agencies. Yes, there is places that you can get recruitment training for an extremely low price. And I will blow our own trumpet. We have a platform at £150 a year for a license for one person will give you access to all the core basic training that every recruiter should have. And that's £150 a year. So that's what, £3 a week. That's less than a pint a week for each individual.
Depends where you drink, Howard.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, I drink in Yorkshire. Yeah, I'm still going to
dodgy Yorkshire boozers. We know.
Still less than £1 a pint into the places I go into. Although that is my kitchen mainly from there. So let's move this on. Let's move this on. So when we're starting to look for people, and we understand that we've got to start to look at transferable skills. So what's more important, EQ or IQ?
Oh, okay. So listen, for me, EQ, beg your pardon, all day long. Nearly got it wrong. Emotional intelligence all day long. When you look at recruitment adverts, very often you'll see recruitment businesses asking for previous experience. They'll often mention they're looking for educational qualifications, degrees, and so forth. For me, there are two really important areas to consider, much more important than the previous two I've mentioned. One is behaviours and values. You need people who fit into your business that reflect your values, reflect the behaviours. And we've all had experiences of high billers who've made money for our businesses, but have been internal terrorists. Nobody wants to work with them. They cause us terrible problems. I've personally let those people go, some of those people go, despite them earning decent income for the business, because they were suppressing the growth of my business. So behaviours and values are incredibly important, especially if you're working in a small recruitment business where you're going to be really face-to-face with your people all day long, and you want to work with people you really like, who share your values and you enjoy working with. The second thing is emotional intelligence. Well, I think everybody knows what that is. It's being perceptive, being sensitive, being empathetic. It's being a starter finisher. It's having great communication skills, being an active listener, being tactile. All those things that I think combine to make an individual somebody that engenders trust. And I think that, for me, is by far and away the most important thing we should be looking for when we bring people into our businesses.
I don't disagree with you, Paul, but I do think there is a slight word of caution in that people who are very high EQ, sometimes they're so good at building rapport with people in an interview that they are disguising the fact that they haven't got the behaviours and values that we're looking for.
You look at the two things together.
So you've got to look at both of those things together, and you just need that slight caution that very high EQ gets people hired.
I was going to say as well, we often talk, when we're thinking about recruiting, we're talking about salespeople recruiting. Well, we know most of our businesses are clearly customer focused, but there's a lot of people we hire in recruitment that don't see customers, that work behind the scenes to let the business perform without friction. And the skills that those people need are not the same as the salespeople. So, for me, it's a question of, do I like you? Will my clients like you? Will my staff like you? And that goes to that EQ that Paul was talking about. Yeah. Because our businesses, whether we've got 7 people or 70, it's a whole range of skills on that spectrum of the type of people that we like to work with. Yeah. And if you like the person, you're on the journey. It used to be, certainly when I was recruiting, it used to be, can they sell? Will they make us loads and loads of money? Now, of course, we're in business because we want to be profitable. So from a customer service point of view, from a customer engagement point of view, we need that as well. But I think now, if you want to hold on to your people, you need to get them right at the first time. And often that means getting the right people in and then training them about our sector, because that doesn't take too long. You can't train likability. Or maybe Heather, you could say that you can, but in my experience, it's more difficult to train likability. Yeah.
So no, you're totally right.
You have to be authentic. It's absolutely true. I must say, whenever I interview somebody, to your point, I completely echo what you said, Dave. I have one question in my head consistently through any interview, and that is, would I buy from you? And that's always in my head when I sit in front of people that want to get into our businesses. Would I buy from you? Would I trust you? Those are the things that are in my brain consistently when I'm speaking to people. And I think you can't go too far wrong if that's where you're placing your thoughts. It's not that, as you say, it's not that difficult. To Howard's point, you've got to obviously be well aware of what your values are, what your behaviours are, the required behaviours and values.
Let's maybe, PJ, there's IQ and EQ, and we can come up with BIQ.
IQ.
We'll create something.
That's like B&Q, but without all the wood. So what we're talking about, though, let's put this in a slightly different plane, because what we're talking about, the people that we're going to be recruiting in the main are Generation Z. They're to be, up to 24 years old, and then we've got Generation Y, and Generation X. Then we're into the millennials. Then we're into the baby boomers. Most managers are either going to be millennials or baby boomers. So we have a very different view of the world compared to the Generation Z and the Generation Y people that we're going to recruit on. So when we start to think about behaviours, we've got to think about the different view that they have the world. They have a world that is almost everything is complete. And I remember having this conversation I was doing some management training with a group of people last week, and I was saying, do you think how they view the world? If you criticize them, they view that as a really, really personal attack, because everything they put on social media, if they get a troll on there, they get really upset by that. But they live their world in their life by that world. So how do you manage them if they get upset if you just have the smallest criticism? So it is about now behaviors that then add to that EQ part that we're talking about. So how are we going to manage and find those Gen Z, Gen Y people that have the right behavioral traits that we need to fill the jobs that we have?
It's
Heather,
really
you go.
interesting.
It's your generation, Heather. You're a very young person. Completely right.
Yeah, your sarcasm, Paul. I'll get you. Don't you worry. I do think it's really important, though, that we do understand that, and they are massive generalizations, right? So whether they're Z, Y, X, whatever they are, there is a move towards social purpose being more important. There is a move towards environmental impact and sustainability being more important. And so one of the things that you need to make sure you include in your EVP is your view on that. You need to include that in your marketing out if you're going to attract people from a younger generation. And this is a huge generalization. It doesn't obviously apply to everybody, but I noticed one of the big recruitment groups has recently gone and got certified as being carbon neutral. And all of the businesses in that group are promoting heavily on LinkedIn the fact that they're carbon neutral. And that's absolutely about the target market for them.
Yeah.
It's not been put in a recruitment context. It's just part of who we are.
Yeah.
Now, 10, 15 years ago,
Heather.
that wouldn't have been important. Sorry?
I understand that, but let's look at this in the reality of it is, okay, we're recruiting these people, okay, and they are that Gen Z, Gen Y, but they're going to be selling to people who are Gen X and millennials. So there's that difference. So it's about finding the right people that have that more blended mix than a pure Gen Z and a pure Gen Y, because they're going to be selling to different groups and different age group, peer groups within that.
So Howard, I think, yeah, we're violently agreeing here. I think the reason for mentioning the carbon neutral thing is about attracting a different generation of people into recruitment. It's about understanding your outward facing can't be about come here and be loads of money, right? Like the video that we talked about earlier with, presenting a different view of recruitment. Once these people join us, it's absolutely about our values and our behaviors and our training and the way in which they interact with different generational things. That's about how we do things around here. That's about how you induct them and you train them within your organization.
So come back to my earlier point about saying, EVP, how you look from the outside is how it feels to work from the inside. So if you're, for example, picking up Heather's point, looking to attract younger people, then it seems to me inconsistent if you're not very heavily involved, for example, in social media, if you don't have a marketing manager and there's a lot of noise going on social media, because, we know that, as Heather said, the younger people, and you said, Howard, sort of live and constantly on social media. If you then join a business that portrays itself to be modern and very contemporary, and you get inside that business and they're doing very limited work in social media areas, it's inconsistent. It's not going to be an environment that's attractive to that generation. So again, this is back to the EVP thing. If you want to attract younger people, and I'm just using this as an example, then your business has to be an environment that is contemporary and is consistent with the way these people live their lives. And so you have to be thinking about that. If you don't want to recruit a younger generation, then perhaps, and I would argue, but perhaps it's not as important to be active on social media, but it certainly is if you want to attract that younger generation, just to pick up on at this point as an example.
I mean, I find it, I don't find it particularly helpful to define people by generational gaps, like millennials and baby boomers and so on.
Right.
I know that socially that people do, because otherwise you go down the line of, well, I need somebody who's, say, under 25. When actually our sector is desperately short of good recruiters.
Yeah.
So why can't they be 50? Why can't they be 40? Why
Correct.
can't they be
Yeah.
60? You know, if I like you, and I think my clients will like you, and I think my staff will like you, it doesn't matter whether you're a baby boomer, a millennial, Generation Z,
Correct.
or X, or whatever.
Yeah.
If you can tell a story and if you can engage with our clients, you can work in recruitment.
Yeah.
Whatever age, whatever ethnicity, whatever, you know, the whole diversity thing which we've covered. So I think we just have to be open to the sort of people you get. One of the clients I work with has just hired a couple of people in their 30s, one in their 50s, and two in their 20s.
Yeah.
So now,
When
Dave,
they went out to recruit, they thought they were going to get people in sort of kind of under 25 and train them, and they've got this real lovely spectrum of people, and it's added such a richness to the sales floor. And I think that's what we need. We just need good, likable people, irrespective of age.
Agreed.
That's what we complete. That's where I was trying to get to, Dave. That we think that most recruitment people are looking for, you know, fresh grads, one or two jobbers. So they're probably under 25, etc. They come out of university, had one or two jobs. That is the general people that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Where there are people further down the line that have more mature skills that are transferable into recruitment, but have never thought about recruitment and potentially could fall into recruitment because they have that transferable skill base. I remember recruiting two people who were both over 30, both estate agents, and were absolutely brilliant at recruitment because they suddenly understood about the conversation. Their EQ was very high, but they could close a deal. They could sell and close, where I think sometimes EQ, people who've got very, very high EQ, miss that sales opportunity because they're too nice sometimes to create that sales opportunity. But that person might be great for a resource type role and a different type role in recruitment. So that's the bit I was trying to get to, is that we've got to start to think about widening our search criteria and not narrowing it down. And that's what we tend to do. We narrow down our search criteria too much, and therefore we're only left with a certain type of people, which will end up being your Gen Y and Gen Z type people, rather than looking at your millennials that potentially have got transferable skills.
Yeah.
So Howard, just to pick up on that point, I had a really interesting conversation with a client yesterday in London. I was in their offices, and this particular individual was talking to me about time. You know, he wants people to be in at a certain point in the day and leave at a certain point in the day, and he's getting irritated that some of his people are leaving bang on 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I just said, I think you're missing the point. I think the point here is we pay people for results. We don't pay people for the amount of hours that they work. We pay for results. This is an industry that pays on results. That's the most important thing. And when you're looking at people from a whole spectrum of backgrounds and age groups and so forth, one of the things you've got to be really investigating is, are they results people? Are they people that get stuff over the line? That you know, things like hours are unimportant. For me, if somebody's done their target in the month on day 18, as far as I'm concerned, they can go and do what they like for the next couple of days because they've made their target. They're paid for results. On the other side of the coin, if come day 20 they haven't done their results, then maybe they have to work day 21 and day 22 to try and get their results. We are paid on results. So I think this whole point comes down to, when you're looking for people, you have to explore their attitude to results, to getting deals done, to getting deadlines completed. That for me is extremely important. Therefore, the hours and things like that don't matter. And this is why age is unimportant. Age is not important. We're a meritocracy industry. We progress in a business based on our ability, our attitudes, not on our age or our length of service.
So what we're saying then is we're back to behaviours, and we're recruiting on behaviours, and we're recruiting on behaviours that align to the values of the business and what we're trying to achieve as a business. And that is where that all starts. So we all think about what we said right early on in this conversation. It's not the person, it's not the process that we maybe got right or wrong. It's the fact we haven't got the right person profile before we go into that recruitment process. And therefore, because we haven't got the right person profile, we're coming out with the wrong person at the other end. And therefore, we've got the wrong churn and burn going on. So we've addressed that bit, and understand that bit, then the rest of the process should be really reasonably good. So here's a question. We've touched quite heavily on, you know, reality versus perception of EVP and getting that wrong. So I'm not going to sort of come back into that. But I'm going to ask the question that a lot of recruiters ask me, and it sort of links back to the question that Sam asked early on about new recruit agencies. You know, they haven't got the time to train people, etc. So do they want to dip into the recruitment market? So would you recruit from the recruitment market, or would you always look at then your homegrown talent?
I would recruit from the recruitment market if there are good people there. It doesn't matter to me where they come from. If they've got some previous experience and culturally and behaviourally they fit, of course I'd recruit from the recruitment market. We are a huge sector. There are so many thousands and thousands of people working in it. If you can get people from the market, then that's great. I just wouldn't limit myself to the recruitment market. I would look elsewhere, as we have to do, because there's a shortage. And a lot of people left our sector 10, 12 years ago, and quite a few have left it in the last 18 months. So I would absolutely recruit from the recruitment market, but I would look elsewhere as well.
Yeah,
so do you think, Dave, then the change of the how people work, you know, working from home, etc., means that we can bring an awful lot of people that have left the recruitment market? We could look at mothers that, you know, people have left for maternity and stuff like that never came back into the recruitment market. Are you saying then there's a lot of dearth of untapped talent because we're not looking at that talent that could potentially come back into the market?
Yeah, there are some significant talent pools out there that are closed off to us because our minds are closed because they've got to be in the office to work. There are people in recruitment who will say, if I can't see them and I can't get the culture of being in the office, they can't work. And then COVID came and threw that completely out the window. And now people are saying, well, COVID's over. We know it's not yet, but COVID is beginning to end. Let's go back to where we were before. The companies that have adopted that attitude, I don't think are going to be as successful as the ones who have adopted a more blended attitude of, well, let's take the best bits of what we learned from that awful COVID situation, working from home, talent based at home, you know, that sort of thing, not coming into the office, and have a culture where we've also got people in the office. And if you can blend the two, the talent pools that are open to you are significantly more than if you just want everybody in one place in the office.
Totally agree with you, Dave.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
PJ, we've always had that conversation about, you know, classing other recruiters as a retread, etc. And, you know, would you put a retread back into your business? You know, so has your vision and your view of that changed due to COVID, or are you still on a view that things have to move forward and therefore you wouldn't recruit people who are on that cycle of, you know, 6 months here, 12 months there, 18 months here, 3 months here, 6 months here, 12 months here?
Yep. Well, I mean, we use that cliche, that sort of tongue-in-cheek statement, retreads. You know, they've been around the block so many times, they're shredding. And, you know, we've all interviewed consultants who seem to have jumped around regularly. They always seem to have jumped before they were pushed. And I'm extremely wary of those people. I'm really wary. They fill me with fear when I see a CV and consistent job changes. Maybe it's the old cynic in me, but there's a reason why people consistently chop and change jobs. And I am generalizing. There are reasons, of course, in many cases, but boy, I've seen some people that have been around an awful long time that, you know, they can do the job, but you know, in my view, we didn't want them. I would rather go out and find people that we can teach, that we can train, who come with an open mind, without bad habits, without that I've bought the t-shirt syndrome, and start afresh. And as you said earlier, I think the challenge, and it's not that people disagree with me when I have this conversation, but I think the challenge for small businesses particularly, and it's been raised, is, well, I agree with you, Paul, but I haven't got the time to train brand new people. I think that's the significant blocker. But as you've already said, Howard, there are ways around that. And whilst we haven't got the time today, we could give a lot of information to people about how they can, even as a small business owner, train people that haven't got previous experience. But I'd be extremely wary of retreads for sure, because if they've left others regularly, there's a very strong chance they'll leave you too.
So as we've got a quick question that's come in, that would you employ someone who's got good experience on a part-time basis?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
When people think I've got 8 vacancies, they think 8 people, not 16. Well, why can't you employ 2 people, one for 2 days and one for 3 days?
Yeah.
If you widen your mind and scope, you the end of the result, at the end of the day, as Paul said, it's based on results.
Exactly.
We've got clients who need us to find people.
So what
I've
we
seen
employ
some
8 people
incredibly
full-time or 16
successful
people
part-timers.
part-time,
Me
as long
too.
as they can do the job, it doesn't matter.
What we're actually saying then is, when we look at what's just been said today, is that if we can find the right person from a recruitment point of view that's got recruitment skills and that they're behaviourally aligned to our business, then it's about that negotiation on how we fit them into our business, whether that is in situ, blended approach, part-time, etc. We should be able to make those allowances to allow those skill set to blossom within our business for the benefit of the business and for the benefit of the person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yep.
So what we're saying is there is a huge talent pool out there that we're not tapping into. And what we're saying is that our EVP has to replicate reality rather than create a big shiny object. And when people come in, there is a massive disjoint between that. What we're saying is that, transferable skills are really important, but EQ is the thing that ties it all together. And we're looking for people that's really got strong EQ. Yes, if we are pointing at Gen Z and Gen Y, that is what we're going to get. But what we're doing is narrowing off against the other generations out there that can have good transferable skill sets into our business. And that's what we want. We want a blended approach of people within our business, because I think a good age mix between our business makes that business more stable and makes that business more understandable from a client's point of view, as well as from a recruitment point of view for people coming into it.
Absolutely.
So from a point of view to recruit our people now, if you looked at the strategies that we've talked to our clients about, what would you change in the strategy? If you could just change one thing, what would that be? And it needs to be really quick because we're pushing on time, but it's been quite an interesting session today. What would be that one thing that you would change in the recruitment strategy to make sure you've got the right people through the door?
I'll go really quickly with mine. Is I would have more focus on internal referrals and exploiting the networks of your existing staff.
And I would say, go on, Dave, you first.
I was going to say, I would make sure that if I'm the leader of that business, that my mindset is changed so that it is open to the widest sector and the widest talent pool available.
And I would say be absolutely proactive, be purposeful about approaching the talent pools from a whole range of diversity backgrounds, be purposeful about getting your people to focus on bringing people in through their networks. Don't wait for the correct people to come towards you. As Dave said correctly, an empty desk is going to cost you a small fortune if it's left empty for very long. You cannot afford it.
I think from my point of view, what I'd be saying is there's 2 slight things that I'd change. The big thing that I'd change is go back to my job spec, change it to be behavioural and align those behaviours to the values of the business and recruit on that premise rather than recruiting on skills. So find the right behaviours of the good people in your business. What are they doing? Look for those type of people. And the second thing that I would change is I would widen my search criteria rather than narrowing it to ensure that I look at all sorts of different types of people to get them within my business. Next week, we're going to challenge ourselves again, because one of the questions that Sam asked earlier on is about training your people once you've got them. And I think that's one of the big things where recruitment lets itself down, is that first year, the training that recruiter gets is really, really important. But it's make or break. And in generalist, what we tend to do is give them a very minimal amount of training, tie several heavy bricks around them, chuck them in a pool and say, now swim. They get to the surface, they open their mouth to breathe, and we put our foot gently on their head and push them back down again, because we tend not to train and train and train. So next week, we're going to talk that through and have a really good understanding of what a good onboarding and training program looks like for the new people coming into our business, to ensure we get them to break even, get them to make profits, and get them to become a valued member of the business as quickly as possible. Ladies and gents, you've got nothing else to questions to ask. Thank you very much for your time. It's been much appreciated. Please spread the word to other people if you know the recruiters that haven't been on these type of webinars. You know, we're trying to help everybody in the recruitment market. As always, if you've got any comments, please send them to us. We'd love to hear them. And for those who haven't had that free one-to-one, drop us a line for a free one-to-one. We'd love to engage with you. Guys, thank you very much. Paul, Heather, and Dave, it's been much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
See you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.